you go to the next slide? Yeah, let me introduce our first speaker. He is Mr. Arnaud Derbaudrenghien, and he is the Managing Director of Katoen, Thailand. So Arnaud has been living for over 15 years in Thailand, and after being active in the retail industry in Belgium, he has moved to Thailand for a Belgian company called ASEAN Sugar Decor to help them to develop further, expand their production capacities. After this first experience in Thailand, he decided to move to expand his experience to join Katoen in 2012. Together with Katoen, he has been active in diverse industries such as automotive, packaging, chemical industry for more than 11 years, providing logistic services to the market leaders in Thailand. Yeah, and our second speaker is Mr. Tom Tabouring. He's a senior commercial manager of ITL Logistics in Vietnam. So Tom is a Luxembourg national on his 4th year in Vietnam. Tom has previously worked in the US, Spain, and Switzerland before relocating to Vietnam, holding a head of sales and marketing position at a Vietnamese logistic company. Tom joined ITL in 2022 and is now leading all activities related to commercial of ITL's domestic logistic services, such as warehousing and transportation. And our third speaker is Mr. Jan van der Borch of Port of Antwerp, Borght. So Mr. Jan der Borch has been the representative for the Port of Antwerp, Borght since 2008. He is responsible for license with various commercial contracts of ports and promotional activities in China for the Port of Antwerp in general. He started his career in Antwerp with Van Omeren Antwerp, which later became Vopak, as director of the logistic division. From there, he joined the Royal Berger Group as vice president until 2007, at which time he moved to Shanghai, China. He is currently the acting CEO of Zeebrugge Group. Over the past 30 years, Jan has built up a broad experience in shipping and logistics and continues to lecture not only as SMU, but also as a lecturer for APAC, Antwerp Port Education Center. Jan has been nominated as guest professor at the Shanghai Maritime University since 2012. He was awarded by the Shanghai Municipal Government with the Silver Magnolia Award in 2014 and the Golden Magnolia Award in 2014. In 2017, he became board member of BeluxCham, the BeluxCham of Commerce in Shanghai. In April 2008, he was appointed economic diplomatic advisor to the Belgian embassy by Derbaudrenghien. So let me now invite the first speaker, Arnaud, to present about Katoen. Over to you, Arnaud.
Wait. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Pauline, for the introduction. So hi, everyone. Good afternoon. So what I will do is I will present some of the difficulties and opportunities that we see as Katoen about green logistics in Thailand. So when I was asked to make the presentation about green logistics, I went to look up on, okay, what is the exact definition or what are the important things within that concept of green logistics. And when we see, in fact, we find that on Wikipedia, which is I would say the modern encyclopedia, we see something that is quite, that speaks for itself, which is the environmental impact minimization. But as well, what is important is that we see that green logistics starts from the beginning to the end of the supply chain. And that an important point as well is that within the green logistics, it's important to keep the balance between the economic and environmental efficiency in order to achieve these results of minimizing the environmental impact. And how can we do that? In the definition, it says itself, so using technology and adequate equipment to minimize that impact will help to achieve the goals. Now, when we see in a classical supply chain flow, we see that the products are going from manufacturer till the market, going through the different phases within logistics, packing, warehousing, then putting the products into trucks, planes, and freights, and shipping it to the markets, to the end consumer. Now, green logistics englobes these three big pillars: packing, warehousing, and transportation. And in my presentation, I will go more in detail on the two activities that Katoen has as core activities, which is packing and warehousing. Now, when we look at the packing and the warehousing, we look at what are the impacts on the environment when we are packing and warehousing. So we have one category, which is the direct impact. So it speaks for itself that the footprint of the warehouse itself, the building of the facilities, installation of the racks, usage of the land plays a role in the impact, as well as the consumption and the waste that is being created through the activities, going from electricity to fuel, water, other consumables like packaging. But there is as well another impact, which is the indirect impact. There, although we are often not doing the transportation, we are not doing the freight, we still have an important role to play into minimizing the impact into the supply chain of our customers. So the fact that we are packing in an efficient way, that we are filling up the different trucks and containers in an efficient way, will define the carbon footprint that our customers, that the market will have. Now, in order to detect, okay, what is the impact, we need to see as well the goals that we can have as a company. So as a company, what we have used, which I believe a lot of your companies here are doing as well, is looking at the United Nations and looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, where there are 17 of these goals there, and see as a company, where can you have the biggest impact? So as a company, we took some of these topics in order to concentrate on them and try to make the difference there. So first of all, we have the people, because at the end, logistics is still quite a people's business. There are a lot of people working in logistics, and therefore providing good health and well-being, providing quality education through training, and bringing an environment where equality, both gender as well as minorities, are being represented, is from an utmost importance. Another one, which is more the classical part, is, okay, what can we do when it comes to the planet? So we can do, when it comes to clean energy and affordable energy, we can focus as well on the circular consumption that is being taking place, as well as taking climate action in order to ensure that our planet is safe, as well as preservation of the oceans, where I will come back on it on one of the specific case studies that we are doing in order to help this sustainability goals. Now, without having prosperity, it's not possible to have sustainability, to have green logistics. So therefore, as a company as well, we try in every country that we are to empower economic growth through innovation and to involve the communities that we have around our terminals as well. Now, the question is, once we have the goals, is, okay, how we can achieve these goals and how we can accelerate this green logistics, we see that, in fact, there is only one key word in that, is invest. Invest in people, where basically we as a company are committed to invest in training, invest in awareness, and make sure that not only on the work floor, people are busy with green logistics, are busy with sustainability, but as well at home. So we are trying to make sure that the automatisms that people are learning on the work floor, they apply it in their daily lives as well. As a company, we believe as well that investment through in innovation and in infrastructure will help to achieve these goals. How can we do that? We invest in buildings. We invest in automated solutions. You see, for example, here, an automated solution in order to reduce the empty space in the packaging boxes that we are sending to our customers. We are investing as well in digitalization and in collecting of data and anticipating that data, work with the data in order to be more efficient and to increase our or decrease, sorry, the impact on our environment, and obviously equipment which will help us to be better in green logistics. Now, one example of a program that has been rolled out worldwide and here in Thailand as well is the Operation Clean Sweep, which is a global program where we try to avoid contamination into the environment of waste into the environment. So that's a clear example of people working together with innovation, where the awareness of our people is there, where the teams have looked for solutions and have find methods in order to collect the waste, to segregate the waste from the external environment. And once the concept was in place, we made sure that there was an engagement of all the teams in order to follow these goals and to basically monitor the goals in order to achieve the results that we want to achieve. As an example there, we see that over the 4 years that this program has been rolled out, we see already a diminishing in waste into the environment of more than half compared to before. We are not there yet, but with the engagement of all the different levels within the company, we believe that we can achieve our target of 0 pallets within the environment. Now, when it comes to enablers and the barriers that we are seeing for green logistics in Thailand, we made a comparison as an example to see where Singapore is and where Thailand is. You see here 2 pictures of one Thailand on your left, Singapore on your left-hand side, where you see the facilities within Singapore covered with solar panels. So there are 70,000 square meters of solar panels that have been installed, good for more than 5 megawatt hour of capacity, which besides using the electricity, the consumption inside our terminal, it provides as well electricity consumption for more than 2,000 households in Singapore. On the other hand, on the right-hand side, you see Thailand, where there as well, you see some solar panels being there, and where already in the last 3-4 years, tremendous efforts have been done in order to install more than 30,000 square meters of solar panels on our roofs. Now, when you look at the 2 pictures, you see a clear difference, where in Singapore, everything has been covered with solar panels, while in Thailand, you still see quite a lot of capacity. When we compare as a group, where we have the willingness to invest in solar panels, we see 2 different environments, where on one hand, Singapore is not only encouraging but supporting as well the different initiatives and provides a framework in order to put back electricity on the grid, while in Thailand, this is not the case. In Thailand, the regulations are being made in order to only use your own production of electricity, but not having the capacity to bring it back to the grid. One of the reasons for this is because the infrastructure, the electrical grid in Thailand, is actually not adapted in order to bring back all this sustainable energy onto the grid and allow other people to use that electricity. We see the enablers in Thailand is that overall, not later than 3 weeks ago, the government has a clear commitment in order to invest in the green economy and to try to reach the United Nations goals. We see as well in Thailand that since 2019, there is quite a substantial increase in sustainability awareness and as well brand recognition, not only within the supply chain, but everywhere in Thailand where brands have gained credit thanks to their sustainability image. But on the other hand, when we see the regulatory framework is not really in line with the commitments that the government has been making. Next to that, we see as well, as I said, that infrastructure is not adapted in order to face the challenges that come in our direction. And an example of the electrical grid that needs a substantial upgrade in order to allow all the different private investors to bring electricity to the grid and to ensure that there is enough capacity when it comes to green energy. And another really important aspect, which I believe is not only valid in Thailand, but overall in Asia, and I would say even in the world, is that on one hand, our customers, the market, which is everyone here in the audience, are we ready to pay for the better solutions? Are we ready to have a longer term commitment towards our partners in order to enable these investments that are needed? So what are the factors that will define the green logistics evolution in the future in Thailand? We see that as a company, and as initiatives need to be raised, we need long-term commitments, we need standardization of supply chain, and we need big investments in order to change the mentality and change the possibilities to go to green logistics. And as well, what I was mentioning, data sharing, not only from the past and the future, is really important in order to make further steps into green logistics. And often we see that this is a bit in contradiction to other buzzwords that we have in logistics, which are agility, which are flexibility, which are data protection. These things, on one hand, from a customer perspective, from a market perspective, are necessary in order to be economically viable. But on the other hand, looking into the future, we need to try to find this balance, to see the balance between economy and environment and work together to make green logistics a sustainable goal. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks so much, Arnaud, for the detailed explanation about Katoen and the comparison between Thailand and Singapore. Yeah. So now let's move to our second speaker. Can I invite Tom, ITL Vietnam, to present? Thank you so much. Over to you, Tom.
Thank you very much, Pauline. So I will share my screen. You can see, right?
Yeah.
Just waiting for it to be in presentation mode. Okay. All right, so good afternoon or almost good evening to everyone. So as Pauline mentioned, my name is Tom. I'm the Senior Commercial Manager at ITL Logistics, which is a Vietnamese company. And as of today, we are actually the biggest one in Vietnam if you take into the revenue contribution and also in terms of assets, since we have more than 250,000 square meters of warehouse, more than 500 trucks, and we also own 4 ports in the south and north combined. However, I'm not here to talk that much about ITL today. I'm more
Tom,
here.
yeah, we are
Yeah.
losing you a bit, yeah?
Oh, can you hear me now? Yeah, so I'm not here that much to talk about ITL today. I'm here to share with you some of the challenges and opportunities of green logistics in Vietnam. And I think we can all agree to the fact that it's impossible to share with you all of the challenges and opportunities because I think there are just way too many. But that's why today I narrowed it down to share you some of these challenges and opportunities from a local logistics provider perspective. And before I get started, I would also like to apologize to those people in this call that perhaps joined the GBA 3 weeks ago. In case you joined that one where I was also the speaker, it's the same presentation, and that is just because the challenges and opportunities, they don't change within just 3 weeks. So my apologies, but you can of course ask any questions that you couldn't ask last time. Anyway, so let's get started by having a look at what are the challenges first. So definitely a low economic motivation and infrastructure hinders the go green capability. And the first challenge that I believe everyone is aware of in Vietnam is the infrastructure. The current infrastructure in Vietnam is especially making the multimodal transportation falling short, right? Which is because the roads are not well connected to the ports. There's not a clear connection to rail, which also means that we have to rely on higher emission logistic solutions such as trucking. But even if you want to rely, or even if you want to improve, let's say, the trucking services in Vietnam by having them more green, you have certain capabilities to do so, right? I mean, one is that you purchase vehicles that are more environmentally friendly, like, for example, Euro 5 or perhaps even Euro 6 vehicles. But the problem is in Vietnam, even to get access to Euro 5 fuels is rather difficult. They might be very much around in the city centers, but the moment you go into more rural areas, it becomes difficult. In addition to that, you know, the battery electric truck is the future. But in Vietnam, we absolutely have zero charging infrastructure as of today. So that also means that it's quite complicated if you are a company that would like to invest into, let's say, battery electric trucks. The second challenge that I see, and I think that was also mentioned by Arnaud, is of course high capex, right? I mean, if we look at if you want to buy, let's say, internal combustion engines and you compare them to, let's say, diesel and propane material handling equipment, and you compare them, let's say, to electric, yeah, it is cheaper to purchase, right? So if you want to, let's say, more on the electric side, you need to have a certain amount of money available to do that investment. And in Vietnam, there are a lot of local players, especially in the logistics industries. According to some studies, we have around 3,000 logistic companies in Vietnam, but the majority of them have rather low financing capability, right? And in addition to that, the market is still dominated by the foreign players. So not every local logistic company is like ITL or Gemadapt or Transimax that have the necessary needs and the means to invest into greener logistics. The next one is accountability. So for the accountability, we have recently received the Decree 6 and also the Decision 876. The Decision 876 was issued by the Ministry of Transport. The Decree 6 was issued by the Vietnamese authorities. And it's a good first step because those two documents, they clearly mention that Vietnam has to be carbon neutral by 2050. But the problem is it really lacks details when it comes to execution. And that takes me to the next point. Import policies of battery electric trucks are very unclear. At ITL right now, we are actually trying to import the first electric trucks into Vietnam, but it's very complicated because most of the companies overseas, they either don't really know the process. Some of them, of course, also don't have the motivation to export to Vietnam because there's simply no market as of today. But overall, there's just lacking policies or clear guidelines on how to conduct certain activities that would promote the green logistics. In addition to that, we also lack incentives to support such investments, like, for example, zero-emission vehicles or environmentally friendly heavy equipment, or even solar panel installations on warehouses. And lastly, dedicated teams are needed. If you look at some big 3PLs, some big logistic companies, global logistic companies, most of them start to have dedicated teams that are focusing on becoming more green in terms of the logistics. But if you look at the local logistic providers, I can guarantee to you that teams like that simply do not exist, right? So you can see that the importance is not necessarily the same as, let's say, in these global logistic companies. And also the local players, they don't also feel the pressure, let's say, from regional offices in Singapore and in Europe, where they say, hey, also Vietnam, now you need to make an effort, right? But those people that are a little bit familiar with how the system works in Vietnam, especially in logistics, many foreign players are still very much, dependent on local players, because certain asset acquisitions cannot be done without a certain percentage of a local player, right? So that's why it's not enough to just have the foreign players being ready to do the change, but the local players also need to change the mindset regarding the green logistics. And then lastly, of course, there are more service limitations than the ones that I just mentioned now here, but one that you can see, which is relevant to trucking, is the lack of infrastructure of Euro 5 fuels or even of charging locations. Because if you know that it's difficult for you to charge, or it's difficult for you to get the necessary fuel within the country, well, then it's also very difficult to utilize your trucks in a way that you can still remain profitable. Now, having talked about the challenges, now we can move on to some of the opportunities. And the first one that I see is develop inland waterway services. We have a very huge connection here in terms of rivers in Vietnam, but I hold the strong opinion that we are not utilizing those enough. We are still extremely dependent on trucking services, but it is no secret that the waterway services are a much greener alternative compared to the trucking. Now, I'm not saying that it will completely take away any carbon emissions, absolutely not, but we can also not go from, we cannot go straight away to 100% electric. I mean, that's just not possible, right? So what can we do in between? And that's why I really believe the inland waterways. According to a study that I read from the Transportation Association in Texas, a barge produces around 15.1 tons of CO2 per million ton miles, while a truck 140 tons of CO2 per million ton miles. So it actually shows you that there is a big difference between those two modes of transportation. And in addition to that, many companies, they always claim that, well, you know, the logistic cost is the most important because it's so high here in Vietnam. Well, if you try to rely a bit more on waterways, you will see that actually your transportation cost will decrease. To give you an example, if you do trucking, let's say from Bình Nhưỡng to Cát Lai Port, from Cát Lai to Cái Mép Port, or if you do it by barge, you can reduce the cost by almost 40 to 50% if you choose the barging option. Track greenhouse gas emissions data, that's another very great opportunity. So there are some third-party service providers out there, also here in Vietnam, that actually help companies to get a clear understanding of the generated carbon footprint that they produce. So in ITL, we are working with an organization called Green Freight Asia, and Green Freight Asia, they are collecting the necessary data from ITL and other companies. And then they have experts and they also have technology to give you the amount of emissions that you produced in a given year, right? And this data can vary. It could be that they would ask you, okay, how many trucks do you have? How many kilometers did you use those trucks in the year? How much electricity did you consume in your warehouse, et cetera, et cetera. Based on that, they will give you the amount of carbon footprint that you produced, and they will also give you suggestions of what you can do better over the next couple of years, right? And this is very crucial because, as I mentioned before, not every company has the means or the workforce to have a department internally that can do that. But that's why those third-party service providers, in my opinion, are very important, because that will, first of all, educate the people, and second, it will also motivate them to make some changes. And yes, it will also enhance corporate value, right? Of course, the mission is to have a better environment. The mission is to make sure that we live in a greener world. But by the end of the day, we also have to remain realistic. And green logistics is also used as a marketing tool, right? And actually, there's nothing wrong with that as long as you actually do something about it. Because what is also happening a lot is a little bit of this greenwashing, where companies, they say they do something for the environment, but in reality, they're not really doing it. But either way, enhanced corporate value is definitely an opportunity that can be generated by going more green. So you will be able to increase your brand awareness. You will also be able to partner and collaborate with global players. If you're a local provider like ITL, by being able to take the green logistics seriously and by investing in it, global players will also have an interest in collaborating with you, because they have their governments overseas who have very strict guidelines on what they need to follow, right? And that also means that you can expect more attractive foreign direct investment as well. And then lastly, lower operational costs. Again, these low operational costs can perhaps not be seen right away. It will take time to see the results, but it is no secret that in terms of maintenance costs, it will be lower, right? Because you don't have to deal with all of the engines. It will be all the electric. You will also be able to reduce electricity consumption in warehouses through natural or automatic lighting, solar panels, and of course, technology to improve the operation efficiency. And one of the biggest, if not the biggest cost when it comes to transportation remains fuel, at least here in Vietnam. So once there is an electric vehicle infrastructure in place, then you will also be able to eliminate those fuel costs. So as I mentioned when I started this presentation, there are way more challenges, there are way more opportunities than the ones that I listed. But of course, I hope you understand that I cannot share with you all of them in a period of just 10 minutes. But before I finish my presentation, I would also like to share with you what ITL is currently working on as a pilot. So first, I would like to show you the cargo flow of export shipments. And currently in Vietnam, those heavily rely on trucking, right? So let's say we have some customers from Vietnam, right? They need to get their cargo to the US or to Europe or to any other part of the world. They would then, we would pick up the cargo from the factory, put them into our warehouse. Then when the order is received, take the cargo from the warehouse to Hai Phong Port. The example is based on the north. And then from there would go somewhere in the world. What we now want to change in this flow, because as I mentioned, we rely way too much on trucking here. First, we would like to include barging, right? So instead of going all the way from our warehouse in Bac Ninh to Hai Phong Port, which is around 130 kilometers, we could go to our closest port, which ITL also owns. And then from there, we could use the barging service to Hai Phong Port, where then it will be loaded to a mother vessel to go to either to US, Europe, or any other part of the world. And how could we even enhance this more? Well, we could enhance it by starting to use battery electric trucks. So where could those be used? Based on our study, they could be used from the factories to our warehouse, as long as the distance of that factory to our warehouse is not that significant. And the same could be used from our warehouse to the Chifeng port, which is our river port, because our warehouse is relatively close to that port, right? So in that way, we would be able, in some cases, to use battery electric trucks, and we would also be able to use more of the barging, which is a method that will definitely reduce the greenhouse gases, but also in general be better for the environment. If you have any questions regarding this, I'm happy to answer them later on, but I believe my time is now coming to an end. So thank you very much for your time, and yeah, any questions, I'm happy to answer them later on.
Thank you so much, Tom, for the detailed explanation, of the situation, of a green logistics situation in Vietnam. Yeah. So let's move on to the third speaker. Yan, over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Pauline, for the introduction. My name is Jan van der Borght. As said, I'm the port representative for the port of Antwerp, Bruges. And my idea was to show you a little bit what we as a port authority, because we don't operate any logistics ourselves, what the role of a port authority could be and what we can do. Allow me just a short introduction on Antwerp, Bruges. We are a newly merged port authority. We merged the ports of Zeebrugge and Antwerp into one, and this actually has given us some extra leverage, and well, basically 1 + 1 became 3. Especially when it comes to energy transition, this has given us a number of extra tools. We're the largest car handling port in Europe, actually largest ro-ro port in the world. We're a major European container port. We're number 2 behind Rotterdam, but in exports, we're still the first one. But also the largest chemical hub in Europe. So you can imagine when it comes to decarbonization, we have a bit of an extra challenge there. It's also an important cruise port in the Benelux, and 15% of the gas for the European market transits through our platform. It's a fairly large port, also an important economic player for Belgium, of course, quite a lot of companies there, huge direct and indirect employment. And we see ourselves as a front runner in energy transition, and we actually have a number of things in our hands for that. When it comes to volume, we're moving 287 million tons, primarily containers. Also quite a big chunk of liquid bulk, which is not illogical when you know that we're a chemical platform. Filled up with dry bulk, break bulk, and ro-ro. So you see it's quite a multifunctional playground that we have. In terms of market share, the dotted line, that's us, followed by Hamburg, the green line. The blue one is Bremen, and then Le Havre and Wilhelmshaven. Now, how can a port actually contribute to this? As a port authority, we have a number of roles. We're a regulator, we're an operator, we're a landlord, and a community builder. Makes us a little bit different from the traditional port authorities in Europe. And it's actually the combination of those 4 roles that allow us to steer and motivate and push some of the initiatives. After the merger, very quickly on actually, we already implemented a number of strategic plans, how we were going to go about this, because we have to make sure that we prepare our port for what we see coming. Basically looking at 3 pillars: economy, climate, and people, meaning that you have to have a value proposition towards the industry on the table. We've been working very hard on a container plan to make the movement of containers more efficient inside the port. Connectivity played a very important role. It has already been mentioned by the previous speaker that multimodal transportation can be a very important tool in greening your operations. As a port authority, we also have to look at ourselves, of course. So we're also greening our own operations in both platforms and making sure that our port is ready for sustainable modules. You will see later on, I will talk about the new fuels that will be used in shipping. Well, these things have to arrive somehow at a place where they can be supplied for ships for bunkering. Antwerp is the ideal platform for that, and we are preparing for that. Also has an impact on our organization. Culture, you need a shift in mentality, of course, keeping in mind where we want to go. We want to prepare the environment for our children and grandchildren, obviously. This is what such a green energy hub of the future is going to look like in our case. You see electricity from offshore wind farms is coming in together with hydrogen and hydrogen carriers, moves through the platform in Bruges, goes to Antwerp. Antwerp is a little bit the spider in the web. Being a chemical hub, we are connected to the major chemical hubs, sites, I mean, in the rest of Europe. And there these connections are done by primarily pipeline, but also rail and barge. Why do we have an advantage? Because, well, these fuels will not only be offered for the shipping and transportation industry, but also the chemical industry is also greening. When we make a statement that we want to be green by 2050, we have the additional burden of having an extensive chemical industry within our port. So they have to go along in this story. Now, the fuels that we are talking about are also used as feedstock for the chemical industry. So that means that the volumes transiting through our platforms are important and definitely will catch the attention of the rest of the world. You see it here a little bit more in detail, where you actually see moving these green molecules through the platform in Zeebrugge, going on to Antwerp, and then supplying the other areas in Europe. We have a roadmap for that. The planning you see here is up to 2030, where we're focusing on the supply, infrastructure, and offtake, and then gradually build it up to make sure that everything is up and running by 2030. Obviously, we subscribed to the European ambitions, the Green Deal, to be climate neutral by 2050. An example of this is green methanol. I cannot elaborate on this because time is a little bit too short for that. We're also a founding member actually, of the Hydrogen Import Coalition. What does this mean? This means that we're going to get hydrogen. Well, first of all, it starts with electricity, solar energy, and wind farms are producing green energy. Through electrolysis, we produce hydrogen. That hydrogen is then transported to the platform where it is synthesized and you obtain green hydrogen, methane, methanol, ammonia, and LOHC, which then goes into the industry and into the shipping industry. Where does this hydrogen comes from? We have a number of agreements already in place with a number of locations in the world, that being Egypt, Namibia, Brazil, and Chile. And then we have the obvious suspects, Australia, US, and Canada, that will add. Because let it be clear, we're going to need quite a lot of this fuel if we want to replace the traditional oil-based fuels. For us as a port, that means working to be a multi-fuel port. At the moment, we are in the top 5 of bunkering ports in the world. We see what's happening, what's going to happen anyway, is you see on the graph on the left, the traditional oil-based fuels will, in the next years, gradually be phased out. You also see the green area, which is LNG. LNG at the moment is becoming more popular as an alternative, but let it be clear, this is just an intermediate solution because LNG is not still completely emission free, but we need that in order to make sure that the industry can convert. Some of the technology even still needs to be developed or further refined so that means of transportation can actually move on those new fuels. And then we're talking about ammonia, hydrogen, and methanol. But you see that between now and 2050, we should make a nice change in that field. When we talk to the shipping companies and hear about their ambitions, you see more or less the same tendency here. It's clear that biofuels and methanol are going to be the fuels for the future. Now, how do you reduce CO emissions in shipping? It's not all about fuel. Yes, of course, fuel is a very important aspect of it, but it's actually the whole picture that needs to be further developed, restudied, re-engineered, etc. We're talking, for example, about the design of the ship, hull and superstructure, also there, the energy management, the management of the fleet itself, optimizing your voyage, etc. So there's quite a lot of work still to be done. What we're doing in Antwerp is we're looking at a number of aspects, notably the sourcing of the clean fuels, providing a bunkering framework. Yes, you can have all the infrastructure and storage in your port, but you need to create a framework that people know where they can bunker which fuel inside your port, and that needs to be done in a responsible and safe manner, of course. Needs quite a lot of risk analysis there. Planning of the last mile delivery, where we need to get all the stakeholders around the table. But also, and that's something that we as a port authority obviously can do, promote the alternatives. How do we do that? Well, those vessels that come in who are sustainable will get meaningful discounts on their port fees. The timeline for all this, you see here, we want to be multi-fuel ready by 2025. And the way it's been going now, I'm pretty sure we will reach that target. This is what it's going to look like at the end of the day. You see here on this infographic, for example, barging. I can tell you that today, it's already operational for quite a while. Barges use onshore power supply. It's going to be further rolled out. I will elaborate on that later on as well. But the idea is that you create a port where you can bunker your fuels in a number of locations, where we also have the import terminals to get those fuels in. They need to be stored, and also local production. LNG, as I mentioned, is ready. These are the locations where bunkering of LNG is allowed, and we have a bunker station from 2021 already in operation. We need to do exactly the same exercise for ammonia, methanol, and hydrogen. You see all the locations on the map. These are currently being analyzed. It's a risk analysis that needs to be finished first quarter of next year. But let it be known, we already have a hydrogen fueling station that was operational in 2021. So there, when I say that we're a front runner, it's not just words. That's a little bit bothering me in the whole discussion when I talk with other ports. I still hear quite a lot of very nice words and promises. But it's on the field that you really prove that you're doing something. Onshore power supply, I already mentioned, also there, quite big ambitions. This is a bit of a tricky one. I mentioned barges is operational, but we're going further. We're starting first with the cruise terminals that will be equipped with onshore power supply, but then gradually moving further and make sure that our terminals have this. We've made a study already about it and need to determine where do we need to focus and where do we have the biggest potential for online power supply. You see a map of the port of Antwerp here. The areas colored green have been identified as our first priority to deliver this facility. Not by coincidence, of course, these are the major container terminals. And there's also a Ro-Ro terminal included in there. You rule by example, so to speak. So we've already greened our own fleet. Our fleet of tugboats and patrol boats are running on hydrogen, methanol, and one on batteries. Some example here that we do in Zeebrugge, where we have the Ro-Ro terminal. We've created multi-level car parks. That's just more efficient use of space. Those are using solar panels for energy. Car washing there is running 100% on wind energy and rainwater. The use of alternative fuels and green power on terminals also in Antwerp. There are a number of container handling installations that currently operate on hydrogen. The charging point for the electrical vehicles are powered by windmills. And by the way, Port of Antwerp is actually the biggest windmill farm in Belgium. Another example of what we try to do is what you see on the map here. This is an area inside the port area, which is called NextGen. There's an area where initially we planned to develop logistics activities, port-related activities. But we decided a couple of years ago that we were not going that way, that we were going to reserve this pure and simple for circular energy. So this is areas, the investments have been announced and the construction has started here. This is an area where we will be recycling some of the products that come out of the chemical industry, for example. These products will be broken down to their molecules. We will create new feedstock, and that will go back for reuse in the chemical industry. So you see, there's quite a lot of areas where we try to advance. Well, that concludes my presentation. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Jan, for the detailed explanation, about your plan, for 2025 and beyond.
May I invite the viewers to, there's a WeChat code on there. If interested, you can follow our WeChat account for those people that use WeChat. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, the panel speakers. I think all of you has actually explained very well, on the port in Belgium, on the situation of green logistics in Vietnam, and also about Katoen, Natie, giving the examples of Thailand versus Singapore. All right, let's continue now with the panel discussion. So I think we are really running out of time. So let me start on, I think we have only one question for the panel speakers. So let me ask and start with Arnaud and then Tom on what is the role of technology into the logistics industries to shift towards sustainable operations. What are the emerging trends and technology? So over to you, Arnaud, and then maybe after that, Tom can answer the question. I have a separate question for Jan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pauline. Thank you for your question. So as you could see through the presentation, we as a company, and I think in general, innovation and technology will play a key role in the future on reducing the footprint of companies. In fact, last week, I was still in Belgium and I was visiting one of our new installations as an example, which is an automated warehouse where basically it helps to reduce the footprints by 2 or 3 times compared to a classical warehouse, which will help. Now, the only thing that we need to be aware of is that, as I was saying in my presentation, logistics is a people's business, including additional technology, making things more automated, will change as well the profile of the team members that we will engage in our company, that will be working with us, going from heavy labor or active labor towards something that is more a technical role. So that's something that will be really important in the future. I think in Thailand as well, where salaries increasing through the years will push companies to not only be more automated from an economical point of view, but as well from an environmental point of view. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Arnaud. Over to you, Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no doubt that technology is extremely important to have, but I think it's, at least here in Vietnam, and I'm sure in other countries as well, it's very complicated because logistics is a very cost-driven industry. Everyone cares about the cost, right? And it's not just the logistic companies who also need to make the effort to invest into technology, but it's also for the customers of these logistic companies to accept perhaps in certain cases a higher cost at the beginning. If now we need to invest in the latest technology, that's a very huge upfront investment, depending on which technology we are talking about, right? But you always receive then the comments from the customers, yeah, but we cannot, you know, we cannot pay those rates because it's simply too expensive. And then you end up not being competitive in the market again. And again, I'm talking from Vietnamese perspective. I cannot talk about Singapore, Thailand, but here I can tell you it's extremely price competitive. Everything is about the price. And this also takes me to availability of technology. I do understand that there's a lot of great technology out there, but again, how much is that technology suitable for specific markets? I give one example. We have our own transportation management system, but we wanted now to work with a third provider for the route optimization. And we worked with a couple, and most of them kind of failed to give us a suitable route optimization here in Vietnam. This has several reasons. It could be that you know, the infrastructure of Vietnam is just very different, and it's not updated yet on all the technology systems. So again, yes, very important, and everyone should use it, but everyone has to be sort of, you know, be together in this. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to implement it. Yeah, from the company point of view.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tom. Yeah, Jan, I have a question for you. What, you know, if you can provide, what are the 3 difficulties or challenges and 3 opportunities, yeah, of green logistics in Asia? Yeah, since you covered a lot in Belgium, I'd like to hear your perspective on this for Asia. Thanks a lot, Jan.
Thank you for the question, Pauline. Well, difficulties more than ample, I would say. Some of them have already been mentioned. Keeping the balance between economic aspect and environment. That also leads to a concern. How do you keep a level playing field? If one side starts to invest heavily in greening their operation, but then loses their position from a competitive point of view. Accountability, I think, is also a very important aspect. Changing the mindset of people. Tom and Arnaud already mentioned it's a cost-driven industry at the moment. So yeah, changing the mindset and even finding people prepared to pay more for greener transportation is not going to be a very easy one. Measuring all this, how do you keep track of what's really been achieved? And last but not least, accountability. You can make all nice kind of nice promises and nice projections, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to measure it and keep people accountable for what they are doing or not doing. I think that's a number of the key challenges that we have. Opportunities, on the other hand, ample. You can already see it from the things that have been said. If we make our operations smarter, greener actually, it can actually sometimes also be cheaper. And that is also where technology is going to come in, to find a little bit more where the hidden opportunities are. I'll give you an example. Not so long ago, I looked at a very specific trade lane and tried to explain to an exporter how many options do you have to move a container from point A in Asia to point B in Europe, both inland locations. And when you considered all the possible alternatives, we actually ended up then more than 1,000 different scenarios. I can elaborate how we get to it, but you can understand that it's not feasible to calculate all those things by hand. That's where your technology comes in. Does that mean that people don't no longer become important? No, on the contrary. And the problem with our industry is that because it's so cost driven, the salaries are actually too low. You do not attract people that have a high level of professionalism with such low salaries. It's also a very stressful job. It's not a really attractive profession. If you pay peanuts, you raise monkeys, I say. We need to do something about that as well, because you can have all those tools. You still need people in the driver's seat to make the right decisions. And I think that's a real opportunity for an upgrade of the industry. It's also an extra push towards a modal shift. Get those things away from the roads, away from trucks, and start using more intermodal transportation, barging, and rail. It's not the easiest one, because usually the paperwork and the formalities, the procedures tend to be a little bit more difficult than using a simple truck, but also there, if you have the right professional people, they will be able to make this work. You just need to push them a little bit.
All right. Thank you so much, Jan. So I think time is running out. Atika, please reach out directly to Tom, for your question. And I'd like to once again thank all our esteemed speakers for their time to prepare the slides and share with you about green logistics. So thanks again, everyone who participate in the webinar, and hope to see you next time. And I'd like to thank also BeluxCham Vietnam, who has provided us the Zoom platform for this webinar. So a recording will be available in the social media, and we will share with all BeluxCham Chamber in Asia, and they can further disseminate the information to all their members. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.